Androids. They're certainly looking a lot more human. But what's going on inside those latex heads? Could they become conscious, like we are? Or is there something unique about human consciousness that no machine could ever replicate? And where did we get our minds if the universe is mindless? Why is it that consciousness makes some philosophers think there must be a God?
Now that's a big question.
That's what I was thinking.
We'll ask leading robot designers whether machines could become conscious. We'll question neuroscientists and philosophers about what our minds are. And we'll get atheist and Christian views on where we got them.
I think a religious account of human consciousness is often a very clever myth, which served pretty well in place of an explanation until you add an explanation.
Given that mind is more than matter, we have to ask the question, how do we explain the existence of mind? Where did it come from? It doesn't seem to be the sort of thing that matter is capable of causing to exist. But if matter can't cause mind to exist, what can?
Some say we're accidents in a universe born by chance. Some say we're children of God. I'm Grenville Kent, a Christian academic, and the new atheists have got me questioning my faith. So I'm going wherever the questions take me with my ever-curious son, Marcus, and talking to leading thinkers on both sides of the God question.
Because I really want the evidence. Is there a God?
And will I ever find a hat that fits?
Bullshit.
Can machines become conscious? Like in the movies? We went to see what some of the world's best minds can really do with artificial intelligence. Professor Hiroshi Ishiguro is famous for making a robotic copy of himself. His robots seem sociable and almost human. But Marcus soon found gaps in their programming.
It's funny, if you stand at this side and tap her there, she looks...
Oh, you're tricking the system already.
They can talk and seem to interact.
Hi, are you single?
He is. He's single.
They seem intelligent, but then you go into the next room.
So the software watches how your face moves.
Ah, yes.
And also then your voice comes through the robot.
By selecting these
And you see the intelligence actually comes from a human brain. So I thought I'd try being the mind of a robot. Hello, Marcus.
Hello?
There's no one home in this machine, so I'm stepping in. But if I'm just made of matter too, what's animating me?
Yeah.
Both the art and engineering, and always looking for the answer to that question, what is human?
What is a human?
I don't know, but that is our purpose, to survive in this world. Why we have the big brain, right? This is not for eating. This is not for they're sleeping, right? So everybody looking for the reason. Well, looking for the answer to that question about what is human.
Do you think machines will ever achieve consciousness?
It's quite difficult, to define the human intelligence. Well, nobody they can explain what is that, right? Even if the brain scientists, they don't know what is that, right? So everybody believes that we have a heart or a mind or the consciousness, but we cannot show what is that, right? But still, everybody believing we have that, right? So I think that is the most important the phenomena. We have to carefully observe. The human is so complicated, and the machine cannot be beyond the human.
How would we copy human consciousness when we barely begin to understand all it involves? Your mind does so much at once, controlling your breathing, looking at people, seeking lunch, missing family, wondering about consciousness. We went to meet one of the world's top AI professors, Hiroshi Kobayashi. His lab looks like a teenager's bedroom, or where Frankenstein was made.
Get me out of here. So how do you think humans and robots will coexist in the future?
We cannot expect a very sophisticated intelligence, artificial intelligence. We use the robot and computer just as a tool. We have to program everything. Otherwise, nothing happened.
Do you think robots will ever have free choice?
Free choice? No,
Hopes, dreams, aims?
no, never.
Love?
Hopefully, yes, but no, never.
Consciousness?
Consciousness? No, never.
Emotion?
No, feeling emotion, no.
So what you're saying then is a compliment to the human being. Do you feel human beings are special?
It's impossible to duplicate human beings. It's my opinion. And what I can do for the human being is just develop something useful to realize better quality of life as an engineer.
What's going on in the human data processing system that a machine can't replicate?
How it works is very difficult to analyze, and even now we don't know at all. So it's impossible to duplicate, I think.
There's a leading AI professor telling us we'll never crack what they call the hard problem of consciousness. AI can do machine control really well, and that will get better and better. Japan's most famous robot is a good example.
Welcome to Honda Local Plaza on your mark.
Don't be fooled by the cute cartoon-like exterior or the childlike voice. This is one sophisticated android.
His ankles and knees flex in complicated ways so that he can walk on uneven ground.
He's good, but my little brothers can move and kick way better.
Walking requires delicate sensing of angle and weight and constant decisions of how much power to apply and in what direction. Azumo's whole body adjusts to balance his arm movements so he doesn't fall over. It's very complex control. Control is the first challenge for AI. The second is machine perception. Azumo's camera eyes can identify a person and avoid them. He's also programmed to recognize up to 8 different voices. Yet machine perception is very difficult, and there's a long way to go. But the third challenge is the hard one, consciousness. And Azumo is not even close. He looks humanoid, but he's programmed, run by clever lists of commands called algorithms. If this happens, then do that. But he's not free. And the only consciousness here is the person in the control booth.
Will a robot ever be free?
私たちが目指しているロボットっていうのはやっぱり、人間が主で、銃がこのロボットって考えてるんですね。
Looking into Azumo's eyes, well, cameras, gives us a new look at ourselves. What it means to be alive, to be conscious, to be embodied, to be free. This little humanoid robot has got us questioning what it means to be a human.
There are 7 billion of us, each with our own inner life. But what is that? Some say our mind is just our brain and our thoughts are its physical product. That's called materialism. It sees the material universe as all there is. Most atheists are materialists. Others say we're more than just a physical brain. We're also a mind or a spirit, beyond the reach of current science. That suggests that there's more than just the material world, and it fits with the idea of God as a great mind behind the universe. We went to the Atheist Convention to hear the first view from a leading neuroscientist, Professor Daniel Dennett.
The term consciousness makes my life difficult because it isn't one thing. But people want it to be one thing, and they want it to be one supercalifragilisticexpialidocious thing. They want it to be magic. And I say, well, it isn't. Just a lot of molecular level machinery chugging back and forth. That's all it is. And people don't like that. We have to get over the idea that there is some as I say, wonder tissue in us that isn't in other living things or isn't in non-living things. That is, I think, that's foolish and romantic. It's just amazing what you can do with protein networks, for instance. And it's amazing what you can do with armies of single cells, like neurons. And that's what we are. We're a trillion agent army of little robotic cells, and put it all together and you've got a conscious agent, if you put it together right.
But how hard would it be to put together? Way harder than Asimo, and Asimo didn't happen by chance.
And can molecular machinery alone really produce consciousness? We asked neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson.
I don't think we could even come close to replicating the human brain with what we do with computers or with artificial intelligence. Because again, you take a single neuron has 50,000 axonal endpoints that synapse with something else. 50,000 in one neuron, and we have billions of them, if not a trillion. I mean, just the multiplication of that is hard to even comprehend. People have asked for decades, for centuries, what is consciousness? We can see all kinds of metabolic activity, electrical activity going on in the brain. And we can see things that are happening even at a cellular level. But we've never been able to define that other dimension, the spirit, the consciousness, that thing that actually makes you who you are. We can take the brain, this person and that person, we can identify them neuron by neuron, and there's nothing that we can find that will show us the answer on a physical basis.
We travelled to England to talk to a Christian philosopher, but we got a little sidetracked.
So a materialist like Daniel Dennett argues that there's no problem in explaining mind and thought in terms of just matter. And he'll say, well, think of a computer or a calculator. You punch in certain symbolic representations to it, 2 + 2 =, and then using the laws of physics, that calculator gives you the true answer for. Well, I think there are a couple of problems with this defense of materialism. Number one would be that he's just assuming that the people who construct the calculator are nothing but matter. And that's the very point at issue. Maybe it takes people with minds that are more than matter to be able to construct material things that can incarnate that way of thinking that comes from mind. The fact that a machine can be constructed to imitate human thinking, so it manipulates symbols using certain laws of physics to give you the correct answer to a sum, say, doesn't mean that that machine is exemplifying actual understanding of what's going on. It's a bit like the way in which a book contains information, but the book doesn't know anything. It takes a mind to understand the meaning of the information that's in the book, and it's the same with a computer. So that's a problem with saying that you can reduce what mind is simply to nothing but matter.
So why would we think there's more to the mind than just the brain? I came to this school when I was 5 years old. Right here is where I copped a ball in the face, off the boot of the beefiest kid in the school. I used to skateboard here with my mates Neil and Emu. That's Neil, and that's Emu. And this is me. It's still me. Every cell in my body and brain has been replaced many times since then. So physically, I'm totally different. And yet, I'm still that same person. So maybe there's more to us than just our physical selves. And it wouldn't be surprising if the physical sciences couldn't quite analyze that. You could say the hardware has all been replaced, but I've still got the software. So what is that software? And then there's free will. Philosophers debate whether we really have significant freedom, but we feel we do. We don't go with the flow, we choose, and we struggle.
But here's the question. How do brain cells produce free will? Cells respond to stimuli, chemical stimuli, electrical stimuli. So where does free will come from? Could it be that there's more to us than just cells?
So someone draws out a gun in the bank and shoots the teller dead. Does it make sense to hold the person morally responsible for that murder? Of course it does. Does it make sense to blame the gun and the bullet and hold them morally responsible for the murder? Of course not. Well, what's the distinction? What's the difference? Well, clearly it's this. The gun is a purely physical system that just behaves according to the laws of physics and doesn't get a choice about what it does. The bullet doesn't get a choice about what it does once the firing pin hits it. But the person, we think, had a choice about whether to squeeze the trigger or not. But that must mean there's more to a person than a purely physical system of cause and effect.
In a simple game, complex sensors in Marcus's muscles and joints tell his cerebellum where his feet are and at what angle. That's proprioception. He feels the wind strength and the ground surface and sees how far I am, and brain and body work as one. And the mind that depends on his brain has emotions and dreams and original ideas, and his subconscious is processing who knows what. The complexity.
His brain, like yours, is the most complex piece of matter in the universe. It has all these areas and centers that do things we barely begin to understand, and it has billions of cells. And yet his conscious experience is of one continuous movie of his life, from one point of view. It's not all fragmented, it's unified. And so what pulls all of that complexity together?
So there's a puzzle in consciousness about the unity of consciousness. I experience all of this information that's coming in to my body through my senses, that my brain processes, and my brain might be processing my sense of sight over here, and my sense of hearing over here, and my sense of touch somewhere else. But there doesn't seem to be anywhere in the brain to which all that information is sort of funneled to produce, like, the center of consciousness. There's no such thing in the brain, I'm told by those who know their neurobiology. But there clearly is something that has that unified sense of consciousness that puts that all together into one experience of reality, and that's me. And that seems to be something above and beyond what the brain is doing.
Karl Popper and Sir John Eccles wrote a book called The Self and Its Brain, where they argue that the self uses the brain like a musician uses a piano. It's a fascinating idea. So what is that self? And could it be a clue that there's more to us than our physical brains alone can explain?
We can scan the biology of the brain and see which parts are active, burning sugars and showing higher electrochemical activity.
But that's not the same as knowing what the person is thinking or feeling what they're feeling. So it seems your brain state is not the same as your mental state. In future, it's likely we'll learn to map brain states better, and we may be able to correlate them more closely with mental states. But further research may confirm the view that mental states and brain states are qualitatively different things. I guess mental states might also remain a mystery to science, which would be ironic if our minds can't understand our minds. But from what we know now, physical explanations don't describe everything that's going on.
Imagine a pink elephant. Okay, imagining a pink elephant. Now, however much I MRI scan your brain or delve around in your brain matter, I am not going to stumble across a pink elephant, okay? So, there's something true of your conscious experience that there's a pink elephant in it that's not true about the matter between your ears. And that means that your conscious experience of that pink elephant cannot be the same thing as your brain.
For more evidence that your mind is more than your brain, let me state the obvious. Your brain is a physical object that takes up space. Your mind and thoughts do not.
If my thoughts really were just physical things, it would seem that it would make sense to think that there are sensible answers to questions like, How much does my thought of an angel cake weigh? If I think of 2 angel cakes, does that thought weigh twice as much as my thought of 1 angel cake? Does the thought of an angel cake weigh less than the thought of a rock cake? Okay, but there's the sort of intuition we have that, well, that's a daft question to think that we could give a physical answer to it. But if my thought were just a physical thing, then there'd have to be a sensible physical answer to those kind of questions.
Here's a question that can really bamboozle you. If your thoughts are just the products of random particles following the laws of chemistry and physics in your brain, why would you trust those thoughts and your perceptions of reality?
If you glanced out of a train window on a train journey and you saw rocks on a mountainside that spelt out, "Welcome to Wales," you might form the opinion, "Oh, I'm arriving in Wales." But suppose you also had this thought, I bet those rocks just fell down that hillside and happened to fall into that pattern that spells out "Welcome to Wales" as a result of a purely naturalistic system that had no input from mind or intentionality behind it. Well, if you had that thought, surely it would be unreasonable of you to also think, well, I really am probably entering Wales purely on the evidence of that arrangement of rocks. But then wouldn't the same thing apply to your own cognitive systems up here? Why would you trust the output of this system if you also believed that this system came into being as a result of a purely naturalistic system that was not supervised by intelligence in any way?
If your thoughts are just the product of particles following the laws of physics, why would they match the world outside?
Many of our thoughts clearly have this important property of either being true or false of things. So thoughts can have truth or falsity as their qualities, but brain cells don't seem to be able to have truth or falsity as a quality. Take 2 brain cells. What would it be for one of those brain cells to be true of something and the other one to be false of something? What property distinguishes, one lump of matter from another as being true rather than false? It doesn't seem to be a physical answer to that question.
See what you think of this idea. I didn't get it the first time I heard it. Imagine you're sitting in a chair thinking about the beach. Your thoughts are about the beach. But the chair isn't about the beach. It's a physical object. And physical objects aren't about other things. So the chair isn't about the beach. Even your brain cells are not about the beach, because they're physical objects too. But your thoughts are about the beach. Wouldn't that suggest that your thoughts are not physical objects?
Thoughts have this quality of being about things, and that doesn't seem to be a physical quality or relationship. If my thoughts have this quality of aboutness that's not a physical property, then there must be something non-physical that has this aboutness quality.
There are 2 stories about how we got our minds.
Designer is natural selection. And over 3.5 billion years, evolution first evolved life itself, and we had simple one-celled organisms, and eventually multicellularity evolved, and then there were teams of cells together, and there were plants and animals, and as the animals got more adroit, as they developed distal perception like vision and hearing, their nervous systems became more complicated. They could see farther into the future is the main thing. That's what brains are for, anticipation.
If you start off with just matter in existence, then however you rearrange that matter over time according to the laws of physics, you're not going to get mind popping into existence. But it seems clear that we do have minds that are distinct from just the material world. So how do you explain the existence of such a thing? You can't explain it in terms of just the material world, so you've got to bring in something beyond the material world, something immaterial. Indeed, a worldview that said in the beginning was mind, like the mind of God, would be a worldview in which finite minds here and now were totally at home.
The great atheist Bertrand Russell said, "Man, his hopes and fears, his loves and his beliefs are but the outcomes of accidental co-locations of atoms. No intensity of thought or feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave. All the labours of the ages,
or the inspiration of human genius are destined for oblivion in the vast death of the solar system. How does that make you feel? And it can't be right, because it would make Professor Russell's own thoughts just the accidental co-locations of atoms, and we shouldn't trust them. But if there's a great mind behind the universe, that could explain why we can understand logic and think critically and do science. Should I tell Marcus that his best thoughts are just the accidental co-locations of atoms, and teach him some dark, bleak nihilism in which nothing really matters? Or should I encourage his curiosity about a great mind that gave him the mysterious property of mind and of free original thought, and wired him up to experience the world and to be happy? What do you think?